Okay, thank you all for coming. We are doing academic research, so we used to joke around. We have the smallest audience. If you write a paper, probably only 20 people will read that. So today, I think it's a very it's really a pleasure. I can share some of the ideas with a larger group, especially people different from our own group. I think I have been doing research on corporate finance, mainly corporate governance and capital market, kind of similar to what Guanghua is doing now. So I think one of the recent interests of mine is to look into the corporate governance situation in the Chinese capital market. For example, people often argue that China has a very strong real economy. Our economic growth rate is very high, but meanwhile, we have very weak capital market. For example, last year, Guanghua mentioned the same number. The Chinese capital market has been the second worst performing market in the world. I think that is not something we want to brag about. So a lot of people have been talking about what could be the fundamental problems associated with this market. And typically, corporate governance is singled out. And so I think starting from 5 years ago, I started to look into corporate governance issues in China. I quickly found that the most serious problem associated with the corporate governance in Chinese public firms is ownership structure. So it has something to do with who owns the firm. So I start to examine the status of those controlling shareholders. And quickly I found that over time, we're seeing some very interesting pattern, which is very unique in the Chinese context. For example, if you think about what happened in China right now, we noticed that in the past 10 years, the families are becoming more and more important, more significant controllers in the Chinese capital market. For example, I and a couple of my students, we worked together and we found that up to 2009, more than 35% of Chinese public firms actually are controlled by families, by private citizens in China. And the government still controls more than 60% of the public firms. But the influence of the families actually is increasing over time. And my bet is that over the next 5 years, very likely, you're going to see that 50% of Chinese firms will be controlled by families. I think so. One of the consequences is that what is going to happen if more and more families are controlling our capital market, and we'll notice that one of the common strategies used by those families is that they tend to rely on the so-called pyramid structure, kind of like in Chinese 金字塔. So what it means is that instead of controlling our firms directly, they use some intermediate firms as a design, so they control intermediate firms first, and then they use the intermediate firms as a device to control the public firms. I think the consequence of doing that is they can use a very small amount of capital to control a lot of public firms in China. So we did some documentation. We found that over the past 10 years, the degree of pyramid building in China is getting more and more serious. And we also found that the performance of those public firms actually is negatively correlated with the degree of the pyramid building. So in other words, if a certain firm belongs to a bigger pyramid, its performance tends to be worse. So I think this observation actually has several policy implications for the Chinese capital market, also Chinese economy. One implication is that we're talking about income inequality, right? And if you're thinking about a few controllers are able to control a lot of public firms in the Chinese economy, definitely that is going to increase income inequality in China. And so I think a lot of phenomena we have been observing in recent years has something to do with that. People are talking about IPOs. When companies go IPO, they become billionaires. And if they become billionaires, they can use pyramid structure to control more firms. They can quickly become trillionaires, maybe someday. So I think that is going to be one of the consequences. And another thing is, I think it's more related to what should be the nature of the Chinese economy. If you have a bunch of controllers who dominate the Chinese economy, I believe that is going to discourage people at the bottom to innovate, to become entrepreneur. Because if you want to become entrepreneurs, you're going to compete with those very powerful guys, and typically you're going to lose the battle because they are controllers. They have a lot of stakes. They have a lot of influence in the government and also in the banking sector and also in the policy arenas. So I think my concern is that if this pyramid building tendency continues to worsen in some sense, that is going to discourage young people from doing innovations and getting into startups and being truly entrepreneurs. So I think for those kind of research, we're seeing more and more efforts, both on the academic and also on the policy side, and hopefully those kind of messages can be get across to larger audience instead of 20 people. So I guess hopefully that will have some influence on the future policy making. Thanks. Yeah.